Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, or good evening if you're over on the other side of the pond where my guests are, or good morning if you might be down under. Welcome to the SADS Facebook Live program number 33. Can't believe it. I'm Mike Ackerman, genetic cardiologist here at Mayo Clinic, and privileged to be the president of the foundation which Dr. Michael Vincent founded some 28 years ago now in 1992. And so on behalf of our CEO, Alice Laura, welcome to SADS Facebook Live. And I'll see some of you start to come in on the chat line, and it'll be great to quote unquote see you. And stay tuned. I'll be seeing some of you live for me to interview you in the coming weeks. We've had over 103,000 views of our 33 programs so far. And so whether you're joining live, as about 100 of you will be, or you're looking at it later, whenever it's convenient, I hope you find these programs of value. Speaking of the SADS Foundation, it's a real treat to have Anne and John Jolly, the founders of SADS United Kingdom, SADS UK, which they founded in 1998, just 6 years after the flagship organization was founded here in the United States. So welcome, Anne and John, and it's going to be a real treat for our audience to get to know the two of you.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Thanks a lot.
Well, as we all know, we continue to coexist with this thing called SARS-CoV-2. It's not going away anytime soon. The numbers are beyond staggering. As we all know, there's been over 36 million cases worldwide, tragically over 1 million deaths. In the United States, we have 7.6 million cases and 213,000 deaths to date. Where Anne and Jolly join us from the United Kingdom, they have 578,000 cases and almost 43,000 deaths. Here at Mayo Clinic, where I am, we've had 2,776 cases, and we've been at 28 deaths now for 2 weeks. So our death rate here is 1%. United States wide, it's about 2.8%. And in the United Kingdom, their case fatality rate is at 7.4%. We in the United States had 56,000 cases just added yesterday. So that's been the highest since August. So put these on, everybody. Put them on. Stay apart. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. We can do this. There's COVID-19 fatigue setting in, and I'm sick of it. You're sick of it. But we've got to all do our part. The other thing I'm sick of, though, I must say, is I had a family with long QT from, I think it was across the pond from what she wrote, where their child has been denied going to school. The school's in session, denied because of the diagnosis of long QT syndrome, being told that they're at too high of risk of COVID-19. And so we need to continue to break down ignorance everywhere that our patients with long QT syndrome are not at any greater risk, no greater risk of a bad COVID-19 outcome than my healthy 17-year-old daughter, than my healthy 8-month-old granddaughter, or my other children, myself. If you're otherwise healthy, long QT syndrome is not a risk factor for a severe COVID-19 outcome. So we've been saying that since February, since SADS Facebook Live #1, and we'll keep saying it until people finally realize the truth. The other thing that's important is October in the United States is National Sudden Cardiac Arrest Awareness Month, passed by the Congress, and we'll be working on things to increase awareness. And awareness is something that my guests have done an amazing job of with SADS UK. And so for the next 15, 20 minutes or so, we're going to give a chance for you all to get to know Anne and John Jolly from the United Kingdom. After that, I'll take the questions that you start bringing in for the balance of our time. So if you do have questions, I look forward to scanning over on the side and seeing them. And I'll take as many questions as I can for the rest of our time. But Anne, John, can you bring us back to 1998? as to why the two of you founded SADS UK. And I know, most people aren't founders of an organization because of a good story. And so, like so many, yours starts in tragedy. But Ann and John, welcome to us, and tell us what really was the start of your journey with the SADS Foundation now some 22 years ago.
Yeah. Well, it all started when our very healthy, or apparently healthy, 16-year-old son, Ashley, went to bed one night and didn't wake up in the morning. We were absolutely devastated, obviously, and totally bewildered, because he was such a live wire. He used to like to play football every week. He was cycling. He was doing so many sports and activities, and there was never any thought in our mind that he could be in any way there could be anything wrong with him at all. But when this happened, we were seeking to find out what the reason was. And in 1998, even less was known about long QT syndrome, which we subsequently found out it was probably an acquired long QT. There was a lot less known about it at that time. You mentioned Dr. Michael Vincent, and we had the pleasure of meeting with Dr. Michael Vincent. We'd spoken to him at the SADS Foundation in Utah, and he came over to London and spoke with us, quite long conversations. And he was obviously very, very helpful. And he felt that Ashley probably died from acquired long QT from a drug he was taking, or a medication he was taking for hay fever, which was subsequently taken off the market. So we chatted quite a lot at that point, and we were very keen to speak with other people it had happened to, so we weren't feeling quite so alone. So we spoke a lot with Alice, with Australia and Canada, and we said, well, is there a SADS in the UK? They said no. So we said, well, why don't we start up a SADS in the UK, raise awareness there, and there must be other people like ourselves, and so that's really where it started. We set up a website, and we held the first International SADS conference in 2002, and we had really eminent cardiologists, Professor Schwartz, Dr. Michael Vincent, Sylvia Priori, and I'm trying to think, the researcher, Catherine Timothy. She came over. Lots of people came over, and we held that at the Royal College of Physicians, and we had 2 sessions running in parallel, one for families and one for GPs. And an awful lot of information was shared during that conference, and it worked out really well for everybody involved. The GPs learnt a lot more about conditions of the electrics of the heart, and families, they found out a lot more too. We were actually, a chap came up to us, actually. He was being treated for epilepsy. And he said, since we'd sent him a leaflet about the long QT syndrome, he'd been reassessed, and he actually was living with a long QT syndrome. They'd wondered why nothing was working, to help his epilepsy. And that was the reason why.
That was an amazing conference in 2002. And really, Ann, you and John with that conference set the model for us as to doing a combined family-focused day and a physician healthcare provider day ever since. And we've had SADS Foundation conferences almost every year since. This year's, of course, got coroned, and we couldn't. We are doing it again next year at Texas Children's Hospital in Houston, but we're still going to do it. We're joining all for the SADS Foundation virtual conference coming up on November 7, and we've had over 100 people register already. I can't wait to see
Brilliant.
you all on November 7th. But, and that's one of many things that Ann and John, get a large measure of credit for inspiring that mechanism of reaching out. And what have been some of the things, John, that you and your wife have seen over these 22 years, that have encouraged you with the progress that's being made?
More people doing CPR.
Yeah, I think just generally getting the information out there to everyone that the cardiac conditions can exist in quite young people, and getting GPs particularly to take that on board. We did a lot of work on a small booklet, which we then got the BHF to look at, and they put it into plain English. And then we posted that out with some financial help from them to every GP in the UK at least twice. That's going to make quite a big difference. That people then began to understand that these conditions are not just sort of limited to sort of 60-year-old upwards. So I think that was quite good. I think gradually over time as well, I keep pushing the information out there to GPs, to teachers, to head teachers, to other organisations, that you've gradually been able to get in the door. Because originally we couldn't get in the door of a school to go and talk about this sort of condition. It was 20 years ago. But now we can pretty much get a reasonable invite without too much problem at all.
And now not only do you get in the door, they're asking you, aren't they? They said,
yes.
Ann and John, we need your help. And you guys have been an incredible voice, not just in the UK, but throughout the world. And Ann, what do you think are still some of the greatest challenges? I was thinking when you mentioned that epilepsy gentleman back then, and yet some 18 years later, we still hear on a regular basis the person with long QT syndrome that had been diagnosed years and years ago incorrectly as having epilepsy. So, there's one thing, how do we prevent Ashley's death when that was seemingly the first and no warning, versus the others where plenty of warning symptoms had been displayed. The families even went to doctors and healthcare providers, but then they get labeled with epilepsy or other things instead of making the correct diagnosis. If you had to say what we should be focusing on the most, where the greatest reward will be for saving lives, what really has your and John's attention right now?
The warning signs that we've worked together with Alice and with yourselves, the medical advisors, Pam and all the SADS International, putting together the warning signs that can sort of indicate a person might be at risk, just to prompt them to go to the doctor's surgery, take a leaflet with them about the various channelopathies and say, can you look at this? Could it be considered to be maybe I'm at risk of one of these conditions? And if they've got a family history, for them to ask to see a genetic nurse, and go through the family history and their all the risk factors with them, really. I think that's really important. And for GPs, that was the reason we got the leaflet out. And on the first page, it talks about, it can affect young people, and about the misdiagnosis of epilepsy instead of some of the conditions. So we wanted that to flag it up right at the very beginning. And we continue to do that. Trying to get it, information into the media, into the newspaper articles, that sort of thing. The conferences, which have been fantastic and given lots of medical updates, but it's just a continual not battle, but continually keeping the awareness out there
Yeah.
and letting it's like an education program as much as anything else, really.
And in your awareness efforts, and like we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we are in the United States National Sudden Cardiac Arrest Awareness Month, and you have done an amazing job with awareness. So when you are in the schools and you have the ear of the teacher or the school nurse or a family, what are you telling them as sort of the red alert warning signs that you want people to give respect to and not to blow off, and not to be too quickly dismissive of, but to pause and think and act on it? What are those warning signs that you have spent so much energy in getting the word out about?
Yeah,
I would say the syncope is the main thing. You know, for a youngster to suddenly collapse, you know, not a slow woozy sort of collapse, an instant collapse. He's not not a normal thing. So if they have that once or twice, they should definitely go and see a physician and get themselves checked out. And it's too easy sort of on younger people to dismiss this sort of thing as being dehydrated or other simple sort of ideas what it may be, but in reality, they need to go and check for a cardiac condition.
The other thing that's helped in the UK has been, I think it's in 2005, when we got together with other charities and got sudden cardiac death and arrhythmia put in the our national service framework, the Department of Health's national service framework, because there was a lot about the plumbing of the cardiology where people had heart disease, but there wasn't anything about the channelopathies. And that, I think, has made quite a big difference, because we were being contacted by people who might have had a family where even 2 or 3 youngsters in the family had died, and the genetic aspect of it wasn't being looked at. It was for some very tragic cases. But since those guidelines, we're not hearing of that now, are we? It's really has seemed to have helped, a lot. So that's something we're really pleased that's gone into the structure now.
John, I really appreciated how you emphasized the warning sign of syncope, but you were then very quick to clarify what kind of syncope is the danger faint, or the danger faint warning faint, as opposed to the normal woozies. Like you said, I like that word, the woozies and the lightheadedness and dizzy. And you said sudden. And so you make a point, don't you, to teach whoever is listening that there's a certain kind of faint that represents the warning faint, because fainting in itself from the woozies is incredibly common. And how do you separate or find the needle in the haystack, so-called? And so when you teach them about the faint, what else do you help them realize to get the right kind of faint brought to medical attention, as opposed to the other faint, which we largely just tell people, just do the salt and water diet and eat lots of salt, drink lots of water? How do you tell them how to recognize the danger faint?
I think the main thing is they just drop sort of suddenly. There's no sort of dizziness or sort of shaking around. It's just instantly down.
Yeah.
So we try and get it through the school nurses, particularly. They're a very, very useful sort of medium to get that sort of information through to.
And have you had success over there, Anne, with the seizures, sort of the whole epilepsy issue? I've been frustrated in the United States, for sure, where I have tried to make the case that every patient with a generalized seizure, not the partial, not the staring, not the absence, but the full-blown generalized seizure, that person deserves at least one electrocardiogram. And yet we're not doing that in the United States as a routine. Are you guys better over there at the notion that a generalized seizure deserves at least one electrocardiogram? What's your success been like with that?
Well, it's something that we always raise awareness of in our conferences, and whenever we speak with people on the phone, if anybody rings us and says they've been having any symptoms, but it's difficult to know. It's just something that we really just sort of keep speaking about. As I say, it's in our booklet. You know, it is a difficult one. It really is quite a challenge, I think, getting through that. It could be a heart condition, not necessarily epilepsy.
Right. And you have some amazing physicians and physician scientists over in England, and two who I love, Dr. Elijah Bear, who you know well, and Dr. Sanjay Sharma from CRY. And have you found opportunities for Dr. Sharma's cardiac research in the young, or CRY, and SADS UK to join forces and get the word out? How have you seen, you know, that 1 + 1 can be more powerful than just 2 kind of thing?
Our focus tends to be quite different, focusing on the warning signs, as we spoke about, and also on if somebody does have a cardiac arrest, on the resuscitation side of things. So we do a lot with resuscitation. We work a lot with cardiac arrest survivors. So our focus is on that. And we obviously with the targeted screening of first degree relatives. But the screening side, we don't tend to promote so much.
Yeah, and I think what you two have done, you know, one of the things with an effort on awareness like you've done, is you never get to realize just how many lives you've saved. The two of you have saved because of the increased awareness that made somebody pause on a warning sign and go get medical attention and then get diagnosed. Because, as you know, when we diagnose the condition, tragedy almost never happens after the diagnosis is made, because we can treat many of these conditions incredibly well. That's the beauty of your awareness efforts, is that when we find these individuals, we are really, really good at treating them.
Yes, that's it. And it's I mean, we fund quite a lot of research, which again is sort of underpins all that we do. And it's nice to see in the conferences, you know, that, you know, so many very technical advances are being made, and you're understanding better how to diagnose people. We work a lot with Papworth Heart Hospital and the ICDs, and now the subcutaneous ICDs that are coming along and improving all the time. And so that's another thing that we're pleased to be involved with. But it's just nice to see the diagnoses being made, you know, more readily, and the people being treated appropriately. I think that's obviously happening a lot more now.
Well, as we come to a close with our initial time together, I have to share with you something from a dear friend just neighboring you in Ireland. Dana is a regular, and so Dana is just saying how wonderful that Ann and John took your tragic situation and have helped so many people through SADS UK. And certainly it could not have been easy in the early, as you grieved Ashley's death, but you two are treasures in the SADS Foundation for what you've done and what you've committed to do. And as they won't ever tell you, but I will, they are recognized as MBEs, and I didn't know what that stood for, but Member of the Order of the British Empire, which is presented by the royal family. And you are part of our royalty, and we really cherish the two of you and all that you two have done. Before I let you go, though, I'm going to give you two the final word, and then I'm going to take some questions for the balance of time that have come on in. But John, what would be the final word that you would want to give anybody listening or joining later by Facebook or by YouTube? I'll let you go first, and then I'll let your lovely wife finish.
Well, that's quite hard one, actually. We've been involved with so many aspects of this subject.
Cardiac.
I think in many ways, the use of defibrillation, the training of CPR is one of the sort of things that you can see a very instant response to, particularly if you sort of take sort of 14, 15, 16-year-olds and you start teaching at that kind of age. You really see an instant response from them as to what they can do in a bad situation and how they can turn that round. And although the other research, the meetings, etc., are all very important, I think as something you can see an instant result from, I think that training is probably the best thing.
Yeah.
Right. And
one thing that I've enjoyed seeing is where people have really found confidence living with the condition. You know, when we've got young people that started as children with the charity, and now they're working and they're leading very successful lives. And I think for us, that's been a really nice thing to see, because when they very first were diagnosed, the whole family were quite traumatized and quite scared of living with this condition. And as the years have gone on, they've got more and more confident, and they've led very fulfilling lives. And that is absolutely fantastic to see. And we get them sometimes to mentor younger children, and it's nice for them to see the older children the adult children now that are, you know, leading really successful lives. And that I think is wonderful.
yeah, I think you said it so well. I mean, I know when you started the foundation, SADS UK in 1998, we thought these diseases, these diagnoses were a death sentence. And now it's a life sentence, and a life sentence of joy and fulfillment, where, you know, directly part of our mission statement is to live and thrive. And when you see that, like you said, and the confidence, that's so fulfilling to see that happen in our families. And so on behalf of SADS Foundation worldwide and ours here, Alice, Laura, and I would just like to thank you, Anne and John. We don't have a Royal Family MBE equivalent designation. All I can give you is our gratitude for your passion and your unrelenting efforts to get awareness out there, not just in your country, but throughout the globe. So thanks for all you do. Stay strong in our fight. We're just getting warmed up, because until we get everyone diagnosed before their first tragedy, we all still have a lot of work to do. And so you two have done more than well in your mission these last 22 years, and I thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mike, and thank you.
And have a wonderful Friday evening, what's left of it for the two of you, and weekend. And for the rest of you all who've joined us, I have 12 minutes on the counter. And Debbie, thanks for the question asking about Brugada Syndrome and COVID. And again, whether it's long QT, CPVT, Brugada, none of these genetic heart diseases are the heart diseases associated with increased risk of an adverse COVID-19 outcome. Those risks are elderly with hypertension and obesity, and I've had coronary artery disease. So those are the heart diseases and the person at greatest risk. If you're otherwise healthy, no great risk. Now, Brugada syndrome, Debbie brings a good point. Like any viral infection that produces fever, anything that is fever generating potentially could agitate the Brugada heart. And that's why whether you got the flu virus or the COVID-19 virus or any other virus, we tell you to lower your fever promptly with antipyretics like acetaminophen, Tylenol, ibuprofen, and so forth. Dana, again, hello there. Importantly for Karen's family, when there's been a sudden death attributed to a non-genetic fatal arrhythmia, there are going to be living individuals who have fainted or had syncope. And so it really is all about, and you saw how John Jolly emphasized, there's certain kind of syncope or fainting that catches our attention and sounds the alarm, or should sound the alarm. And there's others, styles or forms of syncope, that we pay very little attention to. And in fact, it's important, our long QT, Brugada, CPVT patients who potentially can have danger fainting, they also can have normal fainting. And so it's always important with any spell that happens that we sort of do our detective work to decide what kind of faint was that. Was that one to amp up and intensify treatment because we didn't like the faint, or one that we sort of dismiss and largely ignore? Great to have Brianna join us again, and always great to have you, Brianna. And thanks your grandmother for that amazing painting of our Bella. Maria has asked a really good question. Can Nadolol, a beta blocker, cause a patient to feel depressed? 17-year-old son was diagnosed with LQT type 1 9 years ago, taking Nadolol, 80 milligrams. Sometimes there's nothing else going on in his life that would cause this feeling. If Nadolol causes this, what could help? He's eating healthier and now weighs 180. Great question, Maria. Part of this is, I'll take a couple minutes to get at this. First of all, most patients who are on a beta blocker, hopefully one of the ones that I like the most, Nadolol or propranolol, different trade names, but those are the two general names. Most patients tolerate the beta blocker really well. They're thriving. They're doing what they want to do. However, beta blockers definitely, in a small subset, can and does cause depression. And it's multifactorial. There's many reasons for that possibility. In our program here at Mayo Clinic, we kind of have gotten a skewed bias because we work to provide treatment alternatives for those who have concluded that they have become a beta blocker zombie, their words. And so those patients who are dissatisfied with quality of life attributed to the beta blocker, I start to see them, and I see more and more of them, because they hear that maybe there's another way of treating their condition that could allow us to have them on less beta blocker and sometimes no beta blocker. So the short answer, Maria, is I definitely have seen it. We have seen dramatic reversals in the person coming back, parents saying, my child is back, when we've worked on strategies to either lower the dose or go to no dose. Sometimes that involves doing the left armpit surgery, the left cardiac sympathetic denervation surgery. So our approach here and in many of the specialty centers throughout the world is, I am never satisfied if our treatment has prevented disease badness, but has introduced a new problem called, thanks a lot, I feel lousy every day. So we want the live part and we want the thrive part. And so if we are wondering whether beta blockers to blame, we work really hard in coming up with a solution or an alternative approach. And so that's a great question. Another great question from Jesse is whether it's CPVT or not, but wondering, does or is it possible that CPVT, catecholaminergic polymorphic ventricular tachycardia, skips generations? And we could substitute any of the letters, long QT, Brugada, arrhythmogenic cardiomyopathy, with this mindset of skipping generations. And she then goes on to say her mom is kind of ignoring the fact that she should be tested, and so is her brother. Really important to understand this. These genetic heart rhythm diseases can appear to skip a generation, but they basically never skip a generation. So there's a couple scenarios. So one possibility is that the disease, Jesse, started in you, new in you, after healthy egg, healthy sperm, magical moment, and then lightning bolt. That's called a de novo mutation or a spontaneous mutation. Most of our diseases, however, when we can trace it back to the generation before, we find it in a member of the generation before. So statistically, it'd be more likely if you have CPVT or long QT or Brugada, that, and you have your genetics known, that it will be present in your mom or your dad, that you got it from one or the other person. Now, it turns out in CPVT that that lightning bolt thing, that new mutation or new in you thing, Jesse, has a greater chance of being a true statement than in long QT. So the lightning bolts in CPVT are more common, but they're still the minority. The vast majority of all of our genetic heart diseases we can trace. So that means it's likely in your mom or dad, and therefore your brother would have a 50% chance of inheriting it just like you did. And so it is really important for your family and all families out there that if the genetic cause has been found, that we use that marker to trace through the family structure to find out who did get it and who did not get it, so that those who did not get it, they're dismissed. Those who did get it can get evaluated as carefully as you have, Jesse, to see how is it showing itself in your body. In other words, you can own the mutation and not show the consequence. So you could own the mutation and have a normal stress test potentially. And that's what gives the appearance of it skipping a generation. And so this is really important. I think we probably, your question is such a good one, Jesse, that we at the SADS Foundation need to do a better job of helping people understand that answer, because we have physicians and healthcare providers who they are the ones telling the families, oh, you don't need to be tested. I already did your ECG and your ECG is normal if it's a long QT family. And we have to say time out. In a family with known genetic long QT, a normal ECG is not good enough to dismiss them. It's a good start. It's encouraging, but the only way you can tell a relative, a family member, that they do not have any risk of the family genetic disease is for that genetic test to be negative in their body. And we, let's see, 3 minutes on the counter. And let's see, oh, there's too many good ones. So we'll take one more on CPVT, and then we'll pick up the rest of them again next week. So since we'll have that be our theme. Veronica, I love your country, Spain. I've been there a couple times. Not lately. Haven't been anywhere, as you know. And her daughter has CPVT, and she's asymptomatic, and she's 15. Can she present symptoms over time? Yes, but so here's the deal. If your daughter has genetically proven CPVT and she's asymptomatic at the age of 15, and we've treated her well with excellent CPVT medications, her likelihood of staying asymptomatic, no symptoms, the rest of her life is really high. So in other words, when we know it's there and we've caught it while they're asymptomatic, we do a really good job of keeping them asymptomatic. And so it would depend on your daughter's stress test. How easy is it to see the abnormality on the stress test? And then it depends on how well the medicines made your daughter's stress test look as normal as my daughter's. And so thank you for the question. And I hope and trust that she will stay symptom-free for her entire life. Well, we're at the end of Facebook session number 33. I hope you've enjoyed this. I sure enjoyed our time with Ann and John Jolly, and two very special people in the SADS Foundation world for all of their work that started with tragedy from Ashley, their son. And out of that, who knows just how many lives that Anne and John, directly or indirectly, get credit for saving because of their commitment to raising awareness for the warning signs. We are in awareness. Be with us next week as we continue on the United States National Awareness Month for sudden cardiac arrest, and my time interviewing a longtime board member and dear friend of mine, Dr. Robert Campbell. And also remember, sign up for our virtual conference. We don't get to be together, so we might as well get together virtually. And that virtual experience is Saturday, November 7th. And I'll be with you. Dr. Susan Etheridge will be with you. Dr. Sylvia Priori will be with you. I think you'll enjoy it. And we've had 100 register already. And then last, since I was talking to Veronica about her daughter, speaking of daughters, here's mine, Grace, from yesterday, 17-year-old senior, and they won second round of sections for the state of Minnesota. She and her doubles partner beat the other team 6-1, 6-0, and so now semifinals is on Monday, and hopefully finals or championship is on Wednesday, and I hope I'll be able to announce next Friday that she and her high school team won the section championship. But I got to go now because guess what? I'm driving in just a few hours, 3 hours away, to go see my granddaughter for the weekend. So I'm looking forward to my weekend. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Stay well, stay corona-free for as long as you possibly can. Refuse to fear, live and thrive, and we'll see you next Friday. Take care, everyone.